Prashant, since you did talk about energy transition, it's clearly at the forefront of global discourse, and India clearly is playing a very crucial role in shaping the future of sustainable energy. And ladies and gentlemen, in this first session of the last leg of our sessions this evening, we have with us none other than Mr. Prashant Ruiya, promoter and CEO of the SR Group. He's going to be sharing his perspective in conversation with Vikram.
Right,
Vikram,
right.
take over the stage. A huge round of applause, please, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Prashant Ruiya, promoter and CEO of the SR Group.
Great pleasure to be talking to Mr. Ruiya at the ET Now Global Business Summit, essentially because we are at a pivotal moment when it comes to self-sufficiency, when it comes to our energy requirements, and we were having a small offline conversation about this where Mr. Ruiya was pointing out how close we've come now to self-sufficiency, and it's an important piece. But we have a changing world order, Mr. Ruiya. We have the Trump administration, and we've heard Mr. Trump go, drill, baby, drill. At this point in time, when we're talking about energy transition, we're talking about trade, and energy being a big part of the India-US trade, we're talking about importing more oil, more gas. So when you talk about transiting from fossil fuels to green energy, Mr. Ruiya, where are we at right now?
First of all, thank you for having me, Nick. I think we're at a very interesting space. First, fossil fuels, I think we wrote them off too fast. For the last 5-6 years, there's always been a discussion that, the era of fossil fuels are over, and, we will transition very quickly into the new, energy transition fuels or the future fuels. But I think that was a bit overdone. And the reality is that both the fuels, both the energies are required. Over a period of time, there will be a transition.
Right.
There is no doubt that we will continue to move in the direction of a replacement of fossil fuels, but it's not going to happen at the speed or at the pace at which some of our European friends, were hoping for it to happen. And basically what Mr. President Trump has done has reaffirmed the need to maintain, fossil fuel investments and development while we continue to invest in all the new energy. So it's not like energy, like for example in India, we today have an opportunity to become self-sufficient in energy. First time in the history. In 50 years, we've always been a big importer of oil and gas. 85% of our energy is imported. And first time we can, because of the new technology, because of solar, because of wind, and because of abundance of sun in India, we have an ability to actually generate our own energy at a very low cost, probably amongst the lowest in the world, but also convert that into products which can be exported, which is why you see a large number of green ammonia, green hydrogen projects, which are all dependent on, low cost renewable power. So it's if you look at over the next 20 years, we're going to see the percentage of fossil fuels come down slowly, and you're going to see the increase of the new energies over time. And wherever technologies are commercially viable, and where the consumer is not going to pay more, and there are two major ones in India. One of them is solar power, and the second one is electric mobility. I think on both those, we want to go really big, very fast, and because there we have a real opportunity of making the change without, being green and at the same time being cost competitive.
So I find it interesting that you're saying that it's going to be a gradual shift from fossil fuels, but yet you say when it comes to EVs, when it comes to the kind of breadth that we could have in solar energy, that is going to be a fast process. So why that dichotomy?
So the way it's happening, I think, is that the growth which the country needs will come from the newer technologies, which is why if you see power generation, a larger and larger percentage of the growth is getting met from, solar and wind. And I think a larger and larger percentage of electric cars, scooters, and trucks, which we are introducing shortly, will move to, the growth will come from the newer technologies. But you still have the entire, 50 years, 40 years, 30 years of capacity which has got created in India or rest of the world. That still needs to continue as a core, supply. And then over time, as the growth continues, you will see that diminish.
But we have set very lofty targets, some would argue, 500 gigawatts for renewables by 2030. And we're talking about net zero emissions, and that's by 2070. Do you think these are achievable? Going at the pace that you're talking about, and you're saying that, look, for all the capacities that have been built when it comes to fossil fuel, it's going to take time to phase out and invest more, and for that you need high capex.
No, I think the solar target is very much achievable. We are already up to 200 gigawatts, and the goal of 50 gigawatts a year is it's high, no question, but it's doable. And I think there's a lot of investment going into this space. And I think electric mobility, you will see, as the battery technology gets better and better, you're going to see, once you can get 700-800 kilometers on a charge, which is not very far away, I think you will see far more adoption, because the electric charging capability will be much, the fact that you don't need to charge every day or every few days makes it much easier to own and operate.
So, but when you talk about, and it's something that you're doing as well, of course, you have been working on a plant in the UK, which is about decarbonization. But when you see their approach towards green energy, when you talk about Europe and UK and how they're pushing that agenda, as opposed to how India is going about it, where is the biggest difference that you see?
Well, I think the biggest difference is that, India, in Europe, they do not have access to low-cost energy. It's a huge disadvantage. And so their solutions, whether it is hydrogen, blue hydrogen, green hydrogen, or wind, offshore wind, or nuclear, those are their solutions. Obviously, they are much more expensive. And because they are more expensive, they need state subsidies to support those net zero targets. We are not in the same position. We are blessed that we have access to low-cost energy, which does not require significant amount of subsidies or any subsidy at all. And that's why they have a different strategy.
So our cost advantages when it comes to generating solar power is very low compared to what they spend. And yet we don't find adaptation as quick as one would imagine with such low cost. What are the impediments?
You mean in India?
In India.
No, I think it's coming on very fast. The only issue with solar is now how do we get 24 hours round-the-clock power? And that's with the advent of batteries and battery technology, we are very quickly addressing this issue. And once you can get low-cost storage, then you will see more and more adoption in places where you need 24/7 power. I think my own view is in the next 2-3 years, you will see significant improvement in storage capability, and with that, much faster adoption on renewable.
So in that sense, you've spotted an opportunity, because the way SR had to reinvent itself, you obviously see potential in this, and that's the direction you're moving in. So tell me about the opportunity that you've spotted over here and how you kind of building on it.
Well, for SR, we've been involved in the energy space and metals and mining, for the last 2 decades, and 3 decades now. And we are basically trying to do both, which is basically continue to make our investments, whatever we have in the industrial side, but also we have 4 main investments we're doing on the energy transition side. One of them is industrial decarbonization, which is what we're doing in the UK with adoption of hydrogen and hydrogen power.
So this is the first time that a refinery is going in for complete decarbonization using blue hydrogen, and that is a first.
Yeah, it'll be the first, and it'll be the world's first decarbonized refinery.
But why there and why not here?
Well, currently that's the technology and that's the support which the UK Net Zero program provides. And
the government is providing over there.
The government is providing the support.
Would you want that here?
Yes, it will come, as I said. And then we are also doing electric mobility with heavy-duty trucks, which we will introduce in the next few weeks. which is again providing a service at the same price as diesel. So we think that will be something which can adopt fast. We're investing in renewable power round the clock, something which I spoke about. And then finally, we're also investing in biofuels,
Right.
which is to blend biofuels as per the new mandates with fossil fuels.
So as far as your company is concerned, to be able to put in a lot more into greener energy at this time, there needed to be a turnaround, a strategy in place. What was that strategy? Because I saw a lot of deleveraging happen. Tell me how you went about that process.
Well, it was, I think, look, we've always been at the forefront of technology. So when we invested in the steel business, in the refining oil and gas business 20 years back, we were always choosing the latest and best technologies which would last the next 20, 30 years. And if you think about new investments today, then those are the investments which you need to make, which will last for the next 20 to 30 years. In terms of, I mean, if you were doing conventional right now, then, as I said, it's questionable. Not saying it's not going to be there, but our view has been that look at conventional, but also technologies which can, which can help energy transition and which will survive the next 20, 30 years. And that's just been the philosophy. So that's the pivot which we have taken.
You know, Mr. Ruia, we are talking about AI and quick adoption of AI and in several sectors in your own. And even as we see AI grow across the several industries that it is now being pushed at a great speed, obviously this requires great energy as well.
Yes.
So how is it going to get powered? Is there a huge opportunity over there too?
Massive growth in energy will be needed because of AI, despite DeepSeek, creating a bit of a flutter. I still think there's massive requirement for, data centers and AI, data centers which require power because of AI. That's going to increase the demand for energy globally, including in developed world, where they've not had much growth in energy because their growth has been muted. But now, because of this, their energy growth is massive, and we're going to have the same in India. It adds to the point, right? If you're going to need more and more energy capacity, then the new capacities which are coming, to some extent, can be met by low-cost, solar and green technologies.
So if you have to stay ahead of the curve, because we're seeing all these changes happen, and at the beginning we were talking about, how entrepreneurship is about being able to spot the opportunities, even if you're going to do a certain amount of disruption. It does involve taking a significant risk as well, because the regulatory environment and several other factors have to support it. Then how do you move?
Well, risk goes along with any investment you make. I don't think this is any different. You have to, in fact, as I said, if you're investing in technology which will survive the next 20, 30 years, you're actually de-risking yourself to some extent. And you have to look at risks and you have to look at returns. We have identified projects where we can manage the risk and where we believe we have, fairly good returns, despite being in energy transition space. And the reason is that they are commercially viable. I think that's the very key aspect which we are looking at. How do we invest in technologies which like electric mobility and stuff, which are where the consumer is not having to pay more or is dependent only on subsidies. And that's, if you can achieve that, then you're reasonably less risky, I would say. There's never zero risk in any investment you're going to make.
Earlier today we had a panel discussion where ministers from various countries were joining us, and one aspect that came out is that when it comes to global cooperation, the key area is climate. And that is the biggest area on which we need global cooperation. That's an opportunity again, because when you talk about India's opportunity to grow and push our exports, where do we stand? Or to be able to draw in investments in this particular field?
It's a massive space and massive point you make. And really, India and China will drive the climate and global agenda, because massive growth and the maximum impact which can happen will happen if India and China adopt faster. And that's where the opportunity lies, because if we can, seize that, then we can actually be a driver, not only in our growth, but, in the whole climate change.
I know you set a target of 10 gigawatts when it comes to green energy. Tell me exactly how you're going to get there. What's the plan? And the opportunity that you're spotting.
Well, ours is, as I said, round the clock. A lot of it is captive for our green hydrogen and for the mobility. All of that requires 24/7 power. That's what we are primarily focused on to meet the requirements which we have captively. Of course, we work with the government and the government schemes. That's part of the deal, but majority would be to meet mobility and hydrogen requirements for renewable.
Well, good luck on the path ahead, Mr. Ruia. Such a pleasure having you here at the ET Now Global Business
Thank you
Summit.
very much.
Thank you. And